Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Yaron Brook Show. And today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take one topic, hopefully, right? We'll see. It's really going to be up to you. We're going to take one topic, which is immigration and the whole tHole comment, tHole countries that President Trump made. And I'm going to open it up to you to ask questions about it, anything you want related to immigration. Now, yes, 2 days ago on Saturday, I did a whole show on immigration. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Blog Talk Radio. And my preference would be that those of you who ask questions have listened to that show so that I don't land up just repeating stuff I already said then. So I would prefer that it build on what I said there to specifics. You know, what about Muslims? What about mass migration? What about culture? What about Europe? I don't know, stuff like that. And then I've got some others as well. But I'm going to leave it really up to you to ask the questions. So you've got an opportunity here. Challenge me, question me, debate me. Now, let me just make this point. I was reading on Facebook. Maybe I shouldn't be reading Facebook. But there's one guy who's complaining quite a bit about the fact that I cut people off when you call in to ask questions and discuss things. Now, I probably do. I mean, I'll admit it, partially because I do it in real life as well. I cut everybody off. I'm an impatient guy. I get your point. I start talking over people. I do that in conversation. I do that with my wife. I do that with friends. I do that all the time. So I'm not surprised that I do it on the radio, but and certainly there are advantages to that. Keeps the show moving. People who have advised me about radio have said don't let the callers go on too long, because the point of radio is not for me to debate the callers, but to entertain you, the listeners, and to educate you, the listeners. And sometimes you guys are just, the questions are just coming in slower than I want, or repetitive, or people repeat themselves. They don't get to the essential. And I talk over you and shut you up. And I'll continue to do that. But I will try to be a little bit more patient. I believe the person who wrote this probably represents a certain percentage of the people on the show who don't like the fact that I kept people off, and maybe that intimidates some people from calling. So particularly today, I'll be patient, but this is an opportunity for all of you who disagree with me about immigration, who want to raise your challenges, who want to tell me how I'm wrong. Just don't make it a lecture. Comment, points, questions are all good. So it's on. So go ahead and call. The number is 347-324-3075. 347-324-3075. And just to remind you, I remind you every show, but this is the kind of thing that kind of you have to remind. You have to press 1 after you hear that you've connected. You have to press 1, and then that indicates on my board that you actually want to ask a question. So anybody out there, it's open mic, 347-324-3075, and then press 1 to let me know that you asked a question. Now, until we get there, because so far no callers, I do have a couple of written questions, but that's about it. And then I can improvise. I can pretend to be hostile to my position and make up some questions. That could be fun. And so we could do that. But I'd rather you do it, right? And so call in, press 1, because I've got a caller right now from area code 906, but he hasn't pressed the 1. So until you press 1, I don't know. We've got another caller. All right. Okay, so while I wait for everybody to call in who wants to ask a question. And I remind you again, press 1, because otherwise I don't know you want to ask a question. I just have callers on. There goes another one. I don't know. Hopefully it's working. I've got callers on, but they're not indicating willingness and interest in asking a question. Press 1. All right. I thought I dropped kind of a little bomblet yesterday on Saturday by saying that I would not be doing my what do you call it? Glenn Beck, the Blaze radio show anymore, and I will not. The Blaze and I are going to go our separate ways for now, and the reason is simple. It's economics. It's audience. I have not. My failure, I have not increased listenership to my show on the Blaze Radio Network. So they brought on a few shows, new shows, at the time that they brought me on in the beginning of the summer. And those shows have just done better with the Blaze audience. Their numbers have grown. And the numbers on the Blaze itself, did not grow significantly. While growth on Blog Talk, growth on YouTube, is growing, particularly November, October. October was a phenomenal month on Blog Talk. Summer was excellent on Blog Talk. So Blog Talk in particular, we've got about 3 times more listeners on Blog Talk Radio than we had a year ago. So if I can 3x listenership on Blog Talk, I mean podcasting. So Blog Talk counts iTunes and Stitcher and all the podcasting apps. So my goal now is to triple listenership every year on the podcast. And then I only started YouTube less than a year ago, and it's steady growth. It's nice, steady growth. You can see the graphs, they're all going up. It's nowhere near as fast as I had hoped. It's nowhere near as fast as I would want, but it's growing, so I'm happy with that. And again, I'm going to focus on trying to raise those numbers. Now, if anybody wants numbers, I can give you some general numbers. I get about 100,000 downloads. And again, this is all noisy numbers. These are what are called organic downloads. So what the industry considers real downloads, not bots, not artificial ones. But the different services report differently. So I know you can tell a lot about Blog Talk. They know exactly who listens, how much they listen, and so on. You know a lot less about iTunes because iTunes gives fewer numbers. And Stitcher and so on. So each one has different numbers. They calculate this a little differently. But about 100,000 downloads a month, every 30 days. My goal is to get to 1 million. 1 million downloads every 30 days. That's beginning to be interesting. Now, Ben Shapiro has 1 million for every episode he does. So, he probably gets 30 million in 30 days. So he doesn't do a show every single day. And I don't know that they're all 1 million, but you can get kind of the proportions, right? Ben Shapiro is the #1 podcaster today, I think, in the U.S. And he gets about, at least political podcast. I think NPR is the biggest podcast. Some of the NPR podcasts are the biggest podcasts in the U.S. But so you get, I'm at 100,000. He's at, I don't know, let's say 10 million. I'm at 1% of where he's at. I think if I was at 10% of where he's at, I'd be really happy. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. Now, in addition, there is movement on picking the show up on terrestrial radio. And we're going to be making an effort to try to structure the show so that people can take the show and put it up on terrestrial radio. So it won't be live on terrestrial radio, but it'll be a restructured version of what we do here on terrestrial radio. And so that is going to be interesting. The first terrestrial radio that already is running my show is KCGO in Chicago. So KCGO in Chicago is already running the Yaron Brook show, I think 2 or 4 times a week. And that, the goal is to use that as a platform to go beyond that. We're also looking at having KCGO produce the show, which will increase the sound quality, allow for screening of callers. So make everything a lot smoother because there'll be a professional production company at the back end, and then also kind of standardizing the format of a lot of the shows so that it's, I think, 12.59 seconds, and then one segment 18:59, and then another one 18:59, so that they can put in the commercials where they need to put in commercials. So all of this is in the works. So just because I am leaving the Blaze does not mean I am giving up on this at all. I continue to be committed to podcasting, to YouTube. I'm committed to trying to break into terrestrial radio, although I have to admit, personally, that to me is less important, because I view, and let me say a few things about this, and then we'll go to the callers, because now I have 2, 4, 5 callers on the line who have pressed 1, so that I know that they actually want to ask a question. Cool. So what we're trying to, so where was I? Oh yeah, so I still view my audience as young people, and I know most of you listening are not young, and that's great. Probably my prime audience right now is 25 to 45, and with depends on the platform. YouTube tilts a little younger, Blog Talk tilts a little older. So, but 25 to 35 on YouTube is the biggest one. 35 to 45 is the biggest one on Blog Talk. But my focus is still 15 to 30. So that's why I'm trying to build, and that's why I want to emphasize YouTube a lot and really try to build up my audience on YouTube. I love it when some of those young people call in. If you remember on past shows, we've had people, high school kids calling in. That makes my day. That is the best. So to the extent that I can get to more high school kids, college kids, that is my my primary audience, and therefore terrestrial radio. No young person listens to terrestrial radio. Sorry, guys. I know some of you do. You're not that young, probably. So the focus is going to be on that. So, all right, enough with my logistics. I've already lost one caller. Don't know what happened to him. Dropped off. But please call in. Today we're talking immigration, tHole countries. That's a topic. Anything you want to say on that topic is great. And, because I'm trying to abide by this new clock that I have gotten, I'm going to take a quick break now. But when we come back, I'm going to take your questions. And now's your time to call in and get in the line. It's going to go pretty quickly.
Looking for inspiration? Follow us on Instagram at AynRand.org and get your daily dose of inspiring quotes, stories on how Ayn Rand fans connect in remote places, as well as updates on our popular student programs and upcoming events. You'll also see which celebrities are reading Rand and posting about it. Follow us today at AynRand.org, AynRand.org, the official Instagram feed of the Ayn Rand Institute. See you there.
All right, we're back, and let's just jump right in with questions. Here we go. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Good evening, Dr. Brook. This is Skylar.
Hey, Skylar, how's it going?
It's going pretty well.
Good. You got a question on immigration?
May we use foul language? Is that possible, or you want me to?
I'd rather not. There's no point in using foul language. I know it gets the ratings up,
right.
But I'm not big on that.
Okay, I'll use tHole. How big of an opportunity did President Trump miss when he was talking about the tHole countries and saying that these countries are so-called tHole because of the dictatorial rule and the despots that lead these countries and have made them unable to be sustainable for living?
Well, of course, he missed a huge opportunity, but why would anybody be surprised by that? Of course, he should have articulated why they're tHole countries, and why the fact that they're tHole countries does not mean that every individual from there is tHole or undeserving to be an American, and why, by judging these countries as tHole countries, he is not evaluating the people coming from there. He is only evaluating the country in of itself, the culture of the country, the political system of the country, the economy of the country, and why one does not dictate the character of the people coming from those countries. Now, That is, and then again, that is also a separate issue than saying there are countries out there that are enemy countries. Now, you could have said that. There are certain countries out there that are enemy countries, and we're not going to allow any immigrants from enemy countries. Cool. I would have respected that 100%. I agree. You don't allow immigrants in for enemy countries. But Haiti is not an enemy country. Africa is not an enemy continent. You could say Libya, maybe. Maybe you could say Libya. You could say particular countries. But you can't just say stuff like that. It's I don't want to use profanity, but it fits Donald Trump, right? Because I don't think what motivated the comment was, oh, if only these countries had freedom, they wouldn't be SO countries. Or if we embrace the people who are escaping these countries because they want a better life, and great, they can find them in America. None of that was his intention. His intention was a purely collectivist, racist comment about the character of the people coming from those countries. In other words, what he wanted to say, and what he said in other occasions, according to some press, is we don't want people from Haiti. People from Haiti stink. And we don't want people from Nigeria. People from Nigeria suck. That's what he really wanted to say, and that's what the SO countries comment was about. It wasn't about, and I opened my show yesterday about immigration with this. I agree with him completely that there are SO countries. There are lots of SO countries. But I don't use the fact that there are SO countries to judge the quality of the people coming from there, or to judge whether the people from there should come or shouldn't. And I gave examples how in the past, Norway was an SO country, and we accepted immigrants from there. Why? In the past, why did we do that? Norway was a poor country in the beginning of the century. Well, we love Norwegian immigrants. Why? Because they were white. They actually were bad at assimilation. They were terrible at assimilating into this country, but they were white, so they were okay. So, this country, which has a history of racism embedded into its immigration policies, in particular, you have to be careful how you speak about these things. And President Trump isn't, and if anything, he encourages the ideas, the thoughts, the link to kind of white supremacists and the whole racist agenda, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Skylar. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you listening.
You.
One of my regular callers, and I don't think I've ever cut Skylar off. I don't know. Maybe because he agrees with me. That would be the explanation. I'm sure other people would give. All right. Let's take the next caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, this is Mikolash.
Hi, Nikolash. Go ahead.
Hi, so you're talking about immigration?
Yes.
Well, why don't you start with just explaining, like, what is, like, the ideal, like, if an ideal world existed, how would it be handled in America?
Yeah.
And also, like, how will other countries, like, react to that, like?
Well, let me just say...
because I heard you say before
yeah.
That it's important to have other countries and for them to be different. Like, not just to only have the whole world be like in America.
Well,
like,
I mean, if America was ideal, it would be great if the whole world was like America. But there's going to be disagreements about the application of individual rights in particular ways. And it would be great if we all accepted the principle, the whole world accepted the principle of individual rights, and each government maybe had slightly different definitions, such as intellectual property right or other particular property rights, or different ways in which they penalized criminal activity and so on, and that you could see a variety, but all guided by one overriding principle, which is the protection of individual rights. That would be phenomenal. That would be a great world. And I think the same with regard to immigration. Now, let me just say that I've asked everybody who asked a question to listen to my show from yesterday, so I don't repeat, from Saturday, so I don't repeat. And I did cover what I consider ideal on my show on Saturday. But let me quickly repeat it, and then talk about how other countries might also, how there might be variation across countries. So the ideal, in my view...
Before you cut me off real quick,
Did I cut you off?
I just wanted to say that,
Yeah.
like, you can continue, like, what you're saying. Like, this is the last thing I'll say, then you can hang up on me.
Sure.
That I'm one of your target audience that you say, the young people.
Great.
And I want to say that I am spreading it among everyone that I know,
Good.
the
Good.
objectivism.
Well, I really appreciate if you share my videos or share my podcast. The number one way to get this platform to be bigger, to grow dramatically, is you, let's call you my loyal audience, sharing on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. This is what social media is built for. It's built for taking your ideas and giving them leverage by sharing them across
it's
the
part
people
of
you know. Go ahead.
It's like 50% of it, because it also you need the person to actually, like, okay, here's the video, and now let me convince you of it. Let me be the example of
Yes.
objectivism, the living example.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to live it. You have to live it to really make this real. Because if you're not living it, then people will look at you and say, what's the point of objectivism? This guy's miserable, or this guy is a lying, cheating brute, or this guy is fill in the blank. So, whatever it is, yes, you have to ultimately live it. Okay, so let me tell you what my ideal is. My ideal is open immigration, but open immigration where there is a border, that is, where the government has the responsibility to screen people coming in. But the screening is done only on the basis of, is this person a risk to the individual rights of the citizens? A risk to their physical well-being. Not a risk in how he votes. Now, this is the ideal. This is under capitalism, right? This is where separation of state from economics, state from everything. The state only is protecting individual rights. Is this person a risk to his neighbor? Does he have an infectious disease? Is he a criminal? Is he a terrorist? Is he an agent of an enemy country? Is he from a country that we have defined to be an enemy? And my view is you have a few places along the border where people can come in and where they are screened for these things. Everything else across the border is private property. And therefore, anybody who enters that private property is trespassing and violating the law and should be put in jail, shot, whatever. I have very little sympathy. If you open up the border, if you actually make it easy for people who want to come and live and produce and work and do good in America, if you make it easy for them to come in, I have no sympathy for people who are trying to sneak in, right? Today, I have a lot of sympathy for people trying to sneak in because we make it so impossible for people to come legally, so people come illegally. But in a world in which it's easy to come in legally, then it would be, it would be much, much worse if you were coming in illegally. So that's my ideal. And I think different countries would probably have similar regimes. They might define a physical risk to people a little differently. Their terrorists might not be our terrorists. Their enemy might not be our enemy. So, and you might think of other categories. Known criminals. What does known criminal mean? I say that, but the fact is somebody would have to define that. If somebody committed, fraud and served his jail time in another country and now wants to come to the U.S., so we're going to hold him as a threat or not hold him as a threat. I mean, these are kind of the details that would have to be worked out by a legislature. I'm not saying that I have the definitive notion of how you define exactly who a threat is and who isn't. But that is the foundation. That is the foundation. And each country will have to pick the details itself. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, how would you restrict the government from not abusing that? Like to say, like, well, this counts as a risk to Americans.
Well,
this counts as a risk to Americans.
How do you restrict the government from abusing any of the laws that it passes? And the way to do that is to be diligent and to kick the bastards out in elections if they do abuse it. and to use the courts. I mean, this is the value of having an active Supreme Court, which throws out laws that are clear violations of individual rights. That is, a Supreme Court that actually upholds the Constitution. So that would be the role. That's how you constrain the government. One, through elections, kick the bastard out by the diligence of the people, and two, through the court system and through the, you've got the nice thing about the American system, and I think the American system was constructed right, is you have a balance of power where each element can veto the other, and even the legislature has two houses that can veto each other. So you have a whole system that constrains the ability of government to do really, really bad things. Now, we can see that the government has, but that to a large extent is because we, the people, have not been diligent, and because there were weaknesses in the original Constitution, which I think need to be fixed, and the Constitution needs to be defended properly and needs to be articulated more clearly based on objective principles. The founders did a great job, but they didn't do a perfect job, and we could get a lot closer to perfection. All right, thank you.
Ayn Rand talks a little about immigration. I can only find one thing that she ever said.
Yeah, in the book Answers, I mean, to her, it was not a very difficult question. She was an immigrant. She came here. Her life was dependent on it. She was embraced by the U.S. She became a citizen through marriage. I think she says in the one comment she makes about immigration, what do you expect? I'm an immigrant. But she also makes the individual rights argument. And so she, I believe, was very pro-immigration. I don't claim to speak for Ayn Rand, so I don't know what Ayn Rand would say in the situation today. I mean, I think I know. That's my position. I try to hold positions consistent with Ayn Rand, and when I think I'm being inconsistent with Ayn Rand, I say that, but I don't know 100% because she's not here to tell me, and you're right, she didn't write about it. She didn't view it as a big deal issue. In those days, it wasn't an issue. It's only, I'd say, in the last 20 years, or really in the last 10 years, that Republicans have made this, the number one issue in elections. And I think it's a symptom of the country moving towards authoritarianism. I think when politicians are desperate to win, when politicians are desperate to achieve power, they look for scapegoats. They look for easy people to blame for the problems that we face. And it's always the easiest to blame the other. And the most obvious other to blame for America's problems, even though they have nothing to do with our problems, are immigrants, particularly illegal immigrants, because it sounds ominous. They're illegals. And so I think that's the source, and Donald Trump mastered this technique, not just with immigrants, but with trade, with China, with South Korea. He mastered the marketing through fear. He mastered the ability to move people through fear. And that is a hallmark of all authoritarians. And it's a sign, the fact that we fell for it is a sign that we as a people are more and more and more easy to be manipulated. We as a people are more and more willing to accept authoritarian arguments. So I think it bodes very, very badly for America that we bought Donald Trump's arguments. And again, is he worse or better than Hillary Clinton is irrelevant to that question, because he won the Republican primaries, and that's what really is scary. All right? Good. Let me go on, because I got a bunch of other callers. Okay. Thanks. Thank you for the call. And yeah, that's my audience. I want young people. I want people who are enthused, people who are going to share, people who are going to go to their friends and in a non-obnoxious, friendly, benevolent way, try to convince them. All right. We have... Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Who?
Hey, Yaron, this is Dave.
Hey, Dave.
I just had a general question and a specific question, if I could ask two.
Great.
First, I agree with you on almost everything except for immigration. I come from more of a Harry Binswanger view, but the first question was, I've noticed that a lot of these people who are very anti-immigrant, it's not, I don't see it so much as racism, and it may be xenophobia, but I think the largest problem is just a general misunderstanding of what rights are. A lot of these people seem to think that rights come from the state and aren't natural. So, they'll often say, oh, they don't have a right to be here because the regulations are, written this way. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think if you're talking about the general public, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's generally no understanding of the concept of rights in the public, and they really have no clue in terms of what rights are and how rights work. But I think it's broader than that. I definitely think there is xenophobia out there. I've seen it. And xenophobia explains the passion. I mean, I've told this story before, that I was about a month before a month or 3 weeks before the election. I was at I was on a panel in front of about 700 Republicans in Chicago at something the radio station put on. And I just mentioned that I was pro-immigration. And the audience went nuts. It wasn't that they disagreed. They went nuts. They flipped out. You thought I'd said, let's have concentration camps. Or you thought I'd said, I'm a communist. Let's open up the gulags and send all you capitalists over there. They booed. They stood up. They wouldn't let me talk. They wanted me off the stage. And we're not talking about young people. We're not talking about alt-right young people. We're talking about 65-year-old Republicans. And this is why I think this has reached a level of passion that I don't think you can understand just as a misunderstanding of rights. It's something, and let me say what I think it is, and then I'll let you, I promise I'll let you talk. I've promised to be courteous to my callers today. Right. I think it's fear. I think it's fear. And this is, give me a little bit to elaborate a little bit on this point, because I think it's really important, because I think it explains a lot of the Trump phenomena and a lot of what's going on here. People aren't happy with their lives. They're unhappy with the economy. They see things are not going well. They don't know how to live a good life. They've never been taught to be self-interested. They don't have the right values, the right virtues, in a sense, the proper approach to living a good life. And they're frustrated. And they see, if they're better Americans, right? If they're Americans who you would associate with the good sense of life that Ayn Rand talked about, they see America slipping through their fingers. They see an elite that is disconnected from their needs and their interests and the challenges that they face economically, culturally, and just in terms of their own happiness. They've been told over and over again that government will solve the problems, and they're not. They've been told over and over again that altruism will lead to their happiness, and it doesn't. They've been told over and over again that all these politicians and these intellectuals and these people are going to solve the problem. It's going to come any day now. And they haven't. And they feel alienated from the entire culture. There's a really good essay in, I think it's Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, by Nathaniel Branden, on alienation. And it's very powerful. And if you read it, you'll see how connected this is to what is going on today. And it's not that they're pro-capitalist, because they don't know what capitalism is. It's kind of a word that sounds good, and they feel like it's right, but they don't know what it is, and nobody will tell them what it is. The Republicans tell them capitalism is the mixed economy, and the socialists tell them, we're for capitalism too. That's what Bill Clinton told them for a long time. And capitalism is empty, and they hear about the Founding Fathers, but then conservatives tell them the Founding Fathers are what the conservatives stand for, and the conservatives stands for nothing, and they sell out at every corner. So they have no concept, really. They haven't been taught, they haven't been educated about what the Founding Fathers stand for. They don't know. They feel that America is supposed to be something else. It's supposed to be some kind of ideal, some kind of wonderful place, and it's not. And they're scared. Alienation leads to fear. And then Donald Trump comes and he says to them, you're right to be afraid. You're right to be afraid. You're being betrayed by everybody. And not only are you right to be afraid, you don't know you should be 100 times more afraid than you are. Because you know what? There's carnage in the streets of America. Now, that's a blatant lie, but it doesn't matter. It's great marketing. And you're being screwed by the Chinese. Again, that's a lie, but it makes great marketing if what you're peddling is fear. You're being screwed by these illegal immigrants. That's a lie, but it's a great way to peddle fear. So really, he took this massive number of Americans who are already feeling alienated from society. They're feeling alienated from the elites, from the culture, from the politics, and from capitalism, from economic success. They're alienated from everything around us. And he lies and lies and lies to make them feel even more afraid. And what do? Because of this fear, they vote for him. They vote for him. So, his whole candidacy is based on lies, but it's lies very cleverly targeted at the alienation, at the fear, at the other, at trying to give the Americans an explanation. Why is the world bad? Because the other is screwing you, and because the elites are screwing you. And that played right into it. And of course, again, all of it is a lie, because there is no carnage in the streets. All the crime statistics, the real crime statistics, show dramatic declines in crime. Trade with China has been one of the best things that's happened to America over the last 30 years. The American economy would be in devastated state today if not for trade with China. And you could go on and on and on about all the things, how he distorted that. But he distorted it in a particular way, and this is why he's clever. In a particular way that made Americans go, oh yeah, I was afraid, now I should be even more afraid. And this guy has given me the answers to what I am really, what is causing my fear, why things in America suck so badly. All right, sorry, Dave, that was a long monologue, but I had to get it out.
I agree. I agree with a lot of that. So you would say someone like, if we, by some miracle, had a John Allison to bring a more, not that Reagan was great, but a Reagan-esque sense of optimism that could reverse the anti-immigration bias, you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that if we had a sense of optimism, if the idea was, a dawn to America, shining city on the hill, but somebody who followed up with it, the problem with Reagan was that he said all that and then didn't follow up on it. And because he didn't follow up, on that I think people have disappointed. So here was Ronald Reagan, the preeminent capitalist, and he didn't do that much. Nothing really happened. Nothing really changed. And America's still culturally and economically kind of in the doldrums. I mean, in many respects, things are good, but in many, many respects, things are bad, particularly for the middle class and the lower middle class in particular. Things, and they don't appreciate the good stuff. So the good stuff they take for granted. So nobody appreciates the magic that is their iPhone. I mean, the magic that is the internet. That's just taken for granted because they don't appreciate what it takes to produce that, what it takes to make that. So again, what you need is a candidate who can explain the alienation. What you need is a candidate who can explain that we live in a mixed economy and that all our problems are consequences of altruism and statism, and that we need, that people need to take responsibility for their own lives, and we need to create a system that both lets them do that and encourages them to do that. And until we have a system that does that, rather than a system that gives people an excuse for not living, then we're going to continue to have this alienation. And I think the challenge is that things are going to get worse, and government is going to get bigger, more intrusive, more authoritarian than it already is. And I think Trump is taking us. Obama took us a big step. I think Bush even took us a big step. Obama took us a big step, and now Trump's taking us from a big step in that direction.
Okay. Well, I had one quick question.
Sure.
I think you would know a lot better. I've looked into it. You just mentioned Trump and his lies, and I've looked into it, and he always brings up Israel and their walls. And I've from what I know, the walls they've built have stopped some immigration or a lot of immigration on the southern border, but when it comes to the West Bank, it hasn't done anything.
Yep. Yeah. Now I've spoken about the walls. I did a whole
Is that
show.
true, or is that?
I did a whole show about the different walls Israel have and the reason that they have those walls. Ultimately, all the walls that Israel has were built in order to stop terrorism. Even though there was a point where there was an outcry against immigrants from Africa coming in through the southern border, a wall wasn't built until there was a terrorist attack from the southern border, from the Sinai into the Negev, and then a wall was built. So the walls are all built to prevent terrorism. The wall in the West Bank has been very ineffective. It has done nothing to prevent terrorism. Other things that Israel has done has prevented terrorism from the West Bank. The wall on the southern border probably has in the short run. We will see, because of course ISIS is gaining power in the Sinai, and we'll see if the wall, it's not a wall, it's a fence, actually stops them ultimately long term. And then the wall in Gaza Strip doesn't help much because they just launch missiles over the top of it. So it's,
right,
fences have their purposes. And certainly if we were being invaded by terrorist gangs from Mexico, then whatever it takes to stop them, and I would invade Mexico and destroy their camps in Mexico and do whatever you have to do within those countries. But it's we don't have that problem on the southern border, thankfully, and it's absolutely great that we don't. Building a wall on the southern border is one of the most ridiculous things anybody has ever proposed.
I agree.
All right.
Well, thanks. I appreciate what you do.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate the support. Thank you. By the way, everything that I described earlier about expanding the show, getting professional production, growing the show to a young audience, all of that requires funds. All of that depends on your support. I can only do as much as you allow me to do through your support. So if you can, go to Patreon. You can give as little as $2 a month, $24 a year. Hopefully, for most of you, that is not a lot of money. I mean, it's great if you can give $50, $100, $1,000, $5,000. But whatever you give there helps me take just another little step forward on this path. Look at somebody like Dave Rubin has, I can't remember, $30,000, $40,000 a month on Patreon, which has allowed him to build a beautiful studio, allowed him to do great marketing and bring in great guests. So that's the direction I would like to go. We're at, I think, about $3,500 a month. That's allowing me to do what I'm doing now. But to get to the next step, I need 6,000 to really start doing this professional production and stuff, and to really market the show, and to get everything up to snuff. We need something like 10, 12, 15,000 a month. So, that's a challenge to all of you. Hopefully the content produced here is worthy of that. All right, we're going to take our next caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this? Yeah, hello. Hello. You there? Area code 641. All right, I can't hear you. You've disconnected. Okay, we're going to take another caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this?
Hi, it's Nathan.
Hey, Nathan. Speak up a little bit. You're a little soft.
I'll do my best. Thanks. It's an interesting show. Thanks for this topic. I've got a couple of questions about your position. With a couple of things I'm not clear. And I listened to your debate with your discussion with Leonard Peikoff a couple years ago, and your Saturday show. And something I'd like to have you clarify for me. There's a sense in which you're comfortable, if you want to call immigration a right, there's a sense in which you're comfortable limiting that right under certain circumstances. And could you say a little bit differentiating that from other rights? Like, for example, I don't think you'd limit free speech if people were saying a bunch of bad things. So could you differentiate between those, first of all, for me?
Yes. So I think that borders mean something. And I think it is important for governments to be able to control borders for the security of the people within that border. And that's part of their responsibility. It's to monitor the border against threats. That's what a government is for. It's there to protect the citizens of a particular geographic area. The government is not there to protect the citizens of the world. It's there to protect the citizens of a particular geographic area against threats internally, but also external, and it's supposed to monitor the border. It is also important for the government to know who, in my view, who is in the country and who is not in the country. There are a lot of implications for this. You don't have exactly the same rights within a country if you are not a citizen, but you are in the country. There are issues of, and it's important for the government to know what the balance is between who the citizens and who the non-citizens are, and what the numbers are, and partially just in terms of their internal resources, this is important. So they are legitimate for the purpose of protection. There are legitimate reasons for a government to monitor these things. And then there are known risks. So in a world where there are no terrorists, in a world where there's no foreign risk, we don't have enemies, everybody is friend, then I think the monitoring in would be very simple. Something that measured your temperature as you walked in to make sure you're not bringing in some infectious disease. Some airports in the world have that already. I don't see a problem with that. Even on private property, you could have that and ban people from entering. And I think some screening to make sure you're not a criminal. And just to know that you're coming in. There's a reason the founders included in the Constitution some kind of census. I think knowing who's in the country is important. So I think for those reasons, it is legitimate of the government not to violate anybody's rights. And I don't think it's a violation of anybody's rights. If it was a violation of rights, I would say no. But as you enter the new country, to stop you and say, here's a list of questions, here's some things, here's some background information before you take a next step. Let me think if I can think of another example. I mean, it is legitimate for the government. What's that? Go ahead.
I've got one. To kind of go this conversation if we want to use it.
Sure.
So I do feel like this does create a conflict in your philosophy by saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say you take somebody who's lives in Mexico or Iran or anywhere, and this person buys a home and land in the United States.
Yep.
Since the purpose of the United States government, properly speaking, is to protect the rights of I guess, people in there,
yep.
Or just keep the inhabitants of the United States. Let's say somebody in one of these foreign countries buys some land and a house and says, okay, this is now my property. I am
yep.
now a property owner in the United States.
Doesn't matter. They're not in the U.S.
But if they don't have any record of violating rights or any indication of being a threat, on what grounds can we say that you can't come to your property?
No grounds. I agree with you. I don't have any problem with that.
Right. So, but you've said in an ideal world, which we might not live in right now, in an ideal world, yes, you would be all for that sort of open immigration.
Yeah.
But you've also said if we live in a more tenuous world like we do today, perhaps, that, yeah, we might be able to limit some of those things.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. So that's right. So I didn't get your original question. I thought you were objecting to me to having people even stopped at the border. But I agree with you. So let's just take the ideal world for a second. Let's just get clarity there so we agree on that. So if you're not a threat, if you don't pose a threat to anybody, absolutely, you buy a piece of land, you're here. Now, what happens in the world in which we live in today? Why can't we just have that go today? At the end of the day, I think we can. But the fact is that in order to get to that, it's going to take a transition. So for me to say today, let's just open the borders up to everybody, and as long as you're not a Muslim terrorist and 5 things, you can come in, does no help to anybody, and it doesn't move us anyway, right? It's the same as me saying, Social Security is immoral, let's end it tomorrow. I'm against that, even though the transition, the 20-year, the 2-generational transition that I would propose for Social Security would involve violating rights during those 20 years. We're screwed. We've got a mixed economy. To unwind a mixed economy is going to take some work, and it's going to take time, and they're going to have to be transitional measures in the direction of complete freedom that we're going to have to take, and during that transition, rights will continue to be violated. What I want to do is make the transition as painless and as rights violating, as minimally rights violating as possible, if that makes sense. But so what I was proposing on Saturday was a transition, was a way to move towards that end. For example, it is true that we have all kinds of regulations that make it screwy to just have people come into the country. And, obviously welfare is one, minimum wages are another. I would like to see, as we start opening up the immigration spigot, that we reduce those other things so that when we reach complete, full, 100% open immigration, as we defined earlier, then all those other things have come down at the same time. So that's my argument. And we always do it, and this is the other point. In phasing out Social Security, we always articulate the moral aim, the goal, the purpose is ultimately the elimination of Social Security. It's zero. And we make the moral case for that. The same with immigration. In whatever immigration scheme we come up with for the transitional period, we state the goal is open immigration. The goal is a complete respect for the individual rights of people, their right to come here. So that's how I would position it in terms of the transition.
Okay. Now,
so I agree with you, by the way, that we'd be violating the rights of that Mexican who bought property here, and that's right. But the question is, how do we violate fewer rights while we head towards the ideal state? Okay. Now, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. In the case of, here's where I think there's a difference between the two examples. In the case of Social Security, well, I agree that the phasing out is appropriate because the people who have been paying in for a long time have a right to get their money back. And also, it would be pretty unreasonable to
but they don't
take
really.
away from them when
They don't have a right to get their money back. They are completely willing and knowing participants in a pyramid scheme. They have no right to that money. If they can get it back, fine. But to say that, because I would phase it out so that they won't get every dollar. They'd slowly get less and less and less of the money that they put in. So they don't have a right to the full amount. I think it's an issue of that the mixed economy has created a state in which people depend on certain things. They've lived their life with a particular assumption about how they're going to live their lives. And the people of 65 who didn't save as a consequence. Now, you could say, screw them. We're just not going to give them Social Security and let them starve. I think that would be wrong. You basically have to say, the government screwed up. We, the people, all of us screwed up. For 60 years, for 100 years, we've been screwing up. And we're going to get it right, but we're not going to put our screw-ups on you, all those people over 65. We're going to phase it out. So you're going to pay some of it, but you're not going to bear the full brunt of what it would mean to end Social Security. And I think the same is true of immigration. We've set up our labor laws. We've set up our entitlements. We've set up our welfare, all in specific ways. And to unwind them, it's going to take time. And if you're going to continue to pay welfare, but you're going to have millions of people crossing the border to get that welfare as it's being phased out, it's just going to screw up the whole system. You've got to calibrate it all while you're phasing it out. I can understand disagreement about this because none of this is easy. The execution of it is not easy. We all agree on not all of us. Some of us don't agree on the principle. And some of us some people here on the chat even, want to reduce my immigration right now. They want to build walls. What I'm saying is I want to move in the direction of open immigration by increasing immigration. And here's one way we could increase immigration in a healthy way by doing the jobs plan that I articulated last time. And that way, it wouldn't be a burden on the entitlement state that we're trying to unwind, hopefully, at the same time. That's the kind of the logic. But I understand that people would not agree with me or come up with a different way of unwinding it. That's fine. That we can argue about the technicalities. if we accept the ideal and we accept the fact that today the immigration laws are evil and that the proposal to build a wall and to restrict immigration even further is evil, and the demonization of illegal immigrants is evil. If we can accept all those, then we can debate the exact way in which we move towards open immigration.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I basically agree with you. I think we might have a slightly different opinion on the Social Security, the reasons for phasing it out slowly. But I think we basically agree.
Good.
But here's where I think there's a little bit of difference. Let's say we did not have free speech today. I mean, you can argue that we don't fully have free speech, but we mostly still do, I guess. Let's say it was just simply not a right that we had, the right to free speech.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we would say that we would slowly phase that right in.
No.
I would say no. If we do it overnight, we make it free.
No, it's the same thing.
Case of the,
it's the same thing if there were armed gangs in the streets paid by the government to shoot people. We wouldn't say we're going to phase it out. We're going to shoot just a few people now and then a few and then. So there are certain rights that are more fundamental than others. And therefore, you cannot live without them. And Ayn Rand was very clear that free speech was one of those. Without free speech, it's complete mayhem, it's complete authoritarianism, and you have to fight it out in the streets. Without the right to actually... Yeah, go ahead.
Property rights strike me as one of those. And if back to my example of the foreigner buying land in America, he now is a property owner in the United States, and we have no reason to suspect him of being dangerous.
Yeah, but this is where... look, we agree on this. I don't disagree with you on that fact. But I would say this. I think during this transitional period, there is a difference between citizens and non-citizens. And this is again relates to the kind of rights. So, and even when it comes to property rights in an ideal society, citizens are going to be treated differently than non-citizens. For example, I'll give you one example. If the Mexican government confiscates this guy's land in Mexico and he didn't become an American citizen while he's living here, the American government would do nothing about it. If he became an American citizen and the Mexican government confiscated, the American government would have some responsibility vis-a-vis him to do something about it. They're just differences. And the first priority is to protect the property rights, lives, and speech of citizens. And then we can expand it once we have that under control. But in a world in which we live today, where property rights are being violated left and right, the property rights of a Mexican buying land in the United States, knowing the existing immigration policies and knowing that he cannot use that land as he wishes to use them, in spite of the fact that all of that is wrong and all of that is evil, is just not on the same scale as the fact that I, as an American citizen, who expect to be able to use my land as I see fit, can't, because of the arbitrariness of the regulation. So I completely sympathize with your case. And I agree with you ultimately that there should be. I mean, somebody like that, in my view, so in my immigration scheme that I proposed on Saturday, you can expand that scheme to include property owners. You can expand that scheme to include people who bring money in. The point of that scheme was to reduce the number of people who come in who are going to be on welfare. That was the purpose of that, of defining it the way that I defined it. And what you're proposing about the Mexican buying land suggests that he's not going to be in welfare, so okay, bring him in. I'm for bringing in as many people as we can, as long as they don't interfere by draining resources from our ability to shrink the welfare state. But again, all this is technical in terms of how you structure these things, and I think disagreement about these things is completely valid as long as we accept the principles, and I think you and I do.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to finish on one last question then. Sure. Since I really don't have any thoughts on this difference between living in the United States and being a citizen, has anybody written anything or said anything on that to maybe learn more about that?
No, nobody has. So this is something, I mean, it's pretty technical and it's pretty minor and maybe not that important long term. I mean, it's important when we get there to define these things. But even today, or even at the founding of America, there were differences between a citizen and somebody who was just living here. You can't vote, for example. Citizens do vote, but there are other types of rights that you don't have. But these are minor rights, derivative rights. The fundamental right life, to free speech, liberty, in other words, and to property, are fundamental rights that have to be protected. And these derivative rights, like voting, that's why I suggested maybe not everybody should vote, and the founders didn't believe everybody should vote. Put aside the racist element, but not everybody should vote. For example, they required land ownership. So I think those are derivative rights. I don't think, and some of these differences between citizens and non-citizens relate to these more derivative rights.
Interesting thoughts. So thanks for your time.
Sure,
Good
pleasure.
to think
Thanks
about.
for calling. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Thanks for the thoughtful questions. All right, let's take another question. Hi, you're on your own book show. Who's this? 516 area code. Hi, you're on your own book show. Hello, hello, hello.
Look.
Yeah, I can hear you. Speak up. No, you're breaking up. You must be on a cell phone with really bad coverage. So try to get better coverage and call back in.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I heard you there. So I don't know what you did differently.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Go ahead. All right, not now. So please try to find a better connection so we can take your call. All right. I think. Let's see. We've taken that one. We're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back just as I figure out exactly what's going on here.
Did you know there is an easy, automatic way to support the Ayn Rand Institute all year long? For any purchase made at Amazon.com, the Amazon Smile program sends a small percentage to ARI. Doesn't matter what you buy, if you shop at Amazon, the money you spend can help spread Ayn Rand's ideas. Are you a student required to read bad philosophers? Buy the books on Amazon and support ARI. Birthdays, anniversaries, and Christmas, all these purchases add up. And it's not just you. Imagine the results if every Ayn Rand fan in the country used Amazon Smile to support ARI. Are you smiling? Sure you are. Sign up is free and easy. Just go to smile.amazon.com and make sure you select ARI as your Smile recipient.
All right, we're back. You're listening to your own book show. We're doing an open Q&A on questions of immigration and issues related to immigration. And I'm surprised nobody has actually called me up and taken kind of a pro-Trump, pro-wall, anti-immigration stand. So where are you guys? I know you're out there. Give us a call, 347-324-3075, 347-324-3075. Have a good phone line. Get some bars on that cell phone or use a landline. And press 1. After you get a connection, press 1 so that I know you want to ask a question. And if you're online and you've pressed 1, then try again, because I'm not getting you. I don't have anybody right now who is online to take a question. Let me take a couple of written questions that were on. All right. They were on they were on Facebook, and then I'll go back to the callers. I'll give you a chance to kind of dial back in and press your ones for me. All right. What right do would-be immigrants have vis-a-vis the U.S. government or whichever country they're trying to immigrate to? Do such rights have any implications on what immigration policy and law should be, or only the rights of the citizens? What rights do they have? I mean, first of all, they have all the fundamental rights. They have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Rights, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. As the previous caller said, if they bought land in the United States, they have a right to that land. They have a right to of association. They have a right to move across a border. They have a right to engage in a contract with a U.S. Seller of real estate, a right to engage in a contract and sell their labor. So they have all the basic rights. And again, the only difference is that it's not the job of the American government to protect those rights when the person is outside the United States, if they're not a citizen. But once they enter the United States, all those rights must be protected. As I described earlier, there are certain rights, derivative rights, that non-citizens do not have. But look, everybody in the world has the right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody. The U.S. government's responsibility is only to protect the rights of Americans. But if somebody crosses in, they become part of, or put it this way, the job of the American government is to protect the rights of people living in America, living in the particular geographic area that is defined as America. And anybody in here has his rights protected, the fundamental rights. Again, there's certain derivative rights that people just don't have. For example, voting would be one of them. All right. Let's see. There was another question here. All right, those questions. Somebody wrote in a question about parenting, which is a really interesting question, and I'm going to answer it, but not now. So send it in to me by email. This is to Jeremy Kinder. Send it in to me by email so that I can hold on to it and on another show, or put it up as an optional question on Patreon. All right, here's another one. What about the property rights of those individuals who own the property at the border of America and Canada and Mexico? Does it follow that they would lease their property to the government for immigration purposes, or how would that work? Well, I assume that some of them, not all of them, some of them would lease the property for those places in which there would be immigration stations, and you would pass through. You wouldn't be able to, if you were from Mexico coming into the United States, you couldn't trespass onto people's property. So there would be certain locations, just like the American government would lease property for military bases and for police stations and for other appropriate functions of government. They would lease border stations in a couple, 2 or 3 or 4 locations across the border to facilitate the acceptance of immigration. The same thing would happen at an airport. They would lease a place from a section of the airport from the owners of the airports, and they would lease it on the border of Canada. And everything else hopefully would be private, and people would not have a right to cross over in that space because it would be trespassing. And so does that apply to flying over their property too? No, because property rights over airspace are complex, and I don't know all the details about property rights on airspace, but you don't have property rights that go ad infinitum into space for anybody flying over. So no, I mean, if they're coming in low, then yeah, but and you certainly do have a certain amount of airspace which relates to noise and other things, but people can still fly over you, particularly if they're not creating noise. So anyway, that is yeah, so that is it. Yeah, let me just say, anybody in the United States has rights, the right to life. And to some extent, it is meaningless to talk about legality of immigration. What does that even mean? Somebody came here. They're here, right? It's not criminal. They haven't violated anybody's individual rights. They haven't used force against anybody. What is the role of government in picking them up and using force on them? Where does the government get the right to do that? It's a bad law that we have today. It's a bad law. So, all right. We have one more caller. Hi, you're on the Yaron Brook Show. Who's this? Hello?
Oh, sorry. Okay. This is Mark.
Hey, Mark. Go ahead. Mark,
So
go
why
ahead.
Exactly,
Speak.
Why exactly do you have to make it so that people can just come in? I don't understand. Just walk in and that's fine.
Well, I didn't say walk in. I said they had to be screened when they walked in. But yeah, by what authority could the government stop them from coming in? Right? They haven't violated anybody's rights. They haven't done anything criminal. They haven't punched you in the nose. They haven't committed fraud. They haven't violated rights. So the government has no job. There has no responsibility vis-a-vis those people. The role of government is to protect individual rights. That's it, right? What was that?
What if people come in and okay, I know we know how to get by. They won't do anything for to us. We just have to just lie and walk in.
And then what?
And then they can get away with the crime they want to do.
Then you put them in jail and you hang them. From my perspective, you shoot them. I mean, so they're always going to be liars. In every society, there are liars. But
for criminals
what's that? I mean, there was a period in which the United States had relatively open immigration, which is the 19th century, and it worked. But the fundamental here is a rights issue. By what right do you stop me from hiring some Mexican to come and work for me? What's it your business? How is it the government's business? Who works for me? Who stays in my hotel? Who I invite to hang out with me? How is it your business? As long as they're not committing a crime, as long as they're not violating rights, as long as they're not a real risk, how is it your business?
Well, I'm just saying that, like, if they walk in, like, it'll just be easier for them if people actually are coming in.
Well, you're screening them. If they have a record, a police record, or if they're a terrorist, or if they come from countries that are enemies of the United States, then you could stop them from coming in. But if they're just coming to work in the United States, or if they have what right, by what gives you the right to stop them? And so
I don't know.
You don't have one. And what if somebody moves from California? Where do you live, Michael? What state do you live in? Hello?
Oh, sorry, you asked me a question?
Yeah, what state do you live in?
California.
California. So what if people from Oregon just start coming to California? What if a lot of them are criminals and they start committing crimes in California? Should we build a wall on the Oregon border and stop people from Oregon to coming from to California? I mean...
Well, no, because it's America, right?
So what? They're bad people. They're committing crimes in California. It turns out that statistically, people who come from Oregon commit crimes in California. Should we stop them? No, because you're innocent until proven guilty. Well, that's true worldwide, right? Or at least until there's an indication that you might be a risk. And if there's an indication that you might be a risk, then we stop you. But as long as there's no indication that you're going to be a risk, the government has no role in intervening. All right. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Oops. Sorry, I think I cut you off there. I apologize. Let me see. Somebody had a question here. What about Gulch Gulch? That's I get that a lot of questions. What about Gulch Gulch? No, Gulch Gulch was private property. They didn't infringe on your right. You had no right to step onto Gulch's land or onto the judge's property. That's private property. Gulch Gulch was all private property. That's the beauty of Gulch Gulch. It wasn't, Ayn Rand did not design Gulch Gulch to be a model government. Gulch Gulch is a private community run by the wants of its private citizens. But it's not a model society. It's not a model government. It's not a model country. And Gulch never pretends it is. And indeed, they're going to go back into America. They're not staying here. This isn't some utopian country. It's an escape. It's somewhere they've all escaped to, and they all own property there. So you can't go to Gulch Gulch because you can't trespass. And you can't come to America if the only way to come to America is by trespassing. Wow. All right. So still hasn't heard the typical arguments against my position, but fine. All right. I'm going to take one more break. Give you a chance to call in if you want to call in. 347-325-3075. Now I have 4 people who are called in, but who haven't pressed 1, so I don't think you are there to ask a question. Area code 906, area code 641, some foreign number, and area code 703. It's fine if you don't want to ask a question, that's fine, but if you do, press 1. All right, 347-324-3075, a break. And if we don't have any callers when we come back, we are going to call it quits. All right, here we go.
2017 marks the 60th anniversary of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. 12 years in the writing, it is Ayn Rand's masterwork. Despite being published 6 decades ago, the novel continues to gain recognition and profoundly influence business leaders, thought leaders, and a growing number of political leaders. Its presence in today's culture cannot be denied. The fascination with Atlas Shrugged persists because it grapples with the fundamental questions of human existence and presents radically new answers. Whether you're an adoring fan who wants to add this new addition to your personal library, or someone who wants to read the book for the first time to see what all the fuss is about, pick up your copy of Atlas Shrugged today. An updated cover for the mass market edition of the novel recently hit stores. Check it out. You can order your copy today on Amazon.
All right, we're back, and I guess we got one caller, and we're going to take this caller and see where that takes us. Hi, you're on the Yaron Book Show. Who's this?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good.
I just wanted to ask you more of an economic question, because I hear a lot of the conservative side saying that basically by having illegal immigrants, they're dragging wages down. And I wanted to ask you if that's actually true, because it kind of makes sense that if they're not competing in the same level, they might be accepting jobs that otherwise they wouldn't accept if they weren't on a desperate need.
Yeah, so I think that, I mean, there are a number of answers to this. One is, I don't care, which is the rights answer, because it's not an issue. You don't have a right to any particular wages, and if immigrants drive down your wages, so be it. You don't, that is, so from a rights perspective, it's not an economics question. It's not a utilitarian question. You do not have a right to wages at somebody else's expense. So if immigrants drive down wages, then they drive down wages. But from an economics perspective, immigrants drive down some wages and increase other wages. And it depends which immigrants. So immigrants who come in and are entrepreneurs tend to drive up wages. Immigrants who come in as farm workers probably tend to drive up wages in the short run, but that frees up capital in the hands of consumers and capitalists who ultimately invest more, and as a consequence of that, increase productivity across the economy, which drives up wages. So it's impossible to say whether the long-term effect on the economy is positive or negative, but every indication is that in a free market, and every economic theory, that in a free market, immigration increases standard of living, quality of life, it increases economic production, it increases productivity, which increases wages, not driving down wages.
Okay, I just wanted to know your perspective, because I often kind of hear more the conservative side.
Yeah, I know, and the conservatives are utilitarians, or at least they pretend to be. And as utilitarians, they think, what will cause the least harm, or what will cause the greatest benefit to the greatest number of people. And then there are also, the conservatives are also pretty bad economists. So they don't understand the kind of Henry Hazlitt economics in one lesson, secondary and multiple level of consequences of economic activity. So they have a very superficial understanding of economics, and therefore they think, yes, you increase the demand for labor by increasing immigration, and therefore wages go down. But what they neglect is the other effects that are going on. One is the number of entrepreneurs that enter the country. Think about all the startups that I mentioned yesterday. In terms of entrepreneurs, job creation is massive. But also the fact that immigrants, by driving down certain wages, are lowering the cost of living, which is raising the standard of living of other people, and therefore leaves more money in their hands to invest to increase productivity that raises wages. So the net, it's unclear what the net actually is.
But so would you be
like more people? Like if you have more babies, somebody gives this example. It's a good example. If you have more babies, does that reduce? Does that drive down wages? No, because having another baby, having another human being, means more people with reason to find more opportunities to create more wealth, which means more jobs, which means greater standard of living and rising wages in real terms.
Okay, so what would be your position on borders? No borders at all. Just let people come here.
No,
and immigration create more wealth,
I've articulated my positions many times, but I encourage you to go back to a show, my last show, which is on YouTube and on Blog Talk and on iTunes, which was just dedicated to immigration. And on that show, I articulated the case for open immigration as we wind down all government intervention in the economy. And in the meantime, a job-based immigration system that emphasizes people's ability to come to the United States who can basically take care of themselves or can find a job in the U.S., any kind of job at any wage level. So to prevent people from coming here and mooching off of the welfare state and the entitlement state. But, neither of my proposals, neither an open immigration system, which is where I'd like us to be one day, or a kind of a job wealth-based system that I would like to have today. Neither of those are going to be adopted by any politician anytime soon. So no worries there. And certainly not by conservatives.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure, my pleasure. And, conservatives are both ignorant about what individual rights are. They're ignorant about economics. They're ignorant about the effect of immigration across the board. They're ignorant about statistics. Conservatives are not a model for where this country should be heading. They are sellouts. They've been sellouts from the beginning. And they have to be, because they have bought into altruism as a moral code, that they live by. All right. Tomorrow, I will be doing a debate in New York City at the tHole Forum. I will be debating, is selfishness a virtue, with Gene Epstein. Gene Epstein is a senior editor at Barron's Magazine. And moderating the debate is somebody I think most of you know. Judge Napolitano from Fox News would be the moderator, which should be a lot of fun. The whole event, I think, is going to be a blast. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be live streamed. So for those of you who cannot make it, it will be live streamed, and there will be links. You just look it up, tHole Forum. And one of the things that you'll be able to do, even on the live stream, is you'll be able to vote before the debate on which position you hold, and then you'll be able to vote again after the debate. Now, your vote won't count if you leave the debate in the middle. So only if you vote at the end of the debate will your vote from the beginning of the debate count. So the idea is to measure how many people were swayed by either my arguments or Gene's arguments. So it's an Oxford, I guess Oxford doesn't really do this, but they call it Oxford style. But it's a great way to measure the impact of people's arguments. So I encourage you all to go online and to vote and to watch the debate tomorrow by live stream. Let's make this a massive event. If we can get lots and lots and lots of people watching this, then there'll be greater interest in having more objectivists defending the objectivist position at debates like this. So go on. Well, no, don't game the system, Nathan. That's not nice. But go online, watch the debate, get engaged, and of course, don't forget, like me on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and don't forget to support the show and to help us grow the show and to help us improve the show by showing your appreciation and showing your financial support on Patreon. Patreon, go to Yaron Brook Show, and you can make a contribution there. All right, thank you all. I'm not sure when the next show is going to be. I'm going to be on the road. It certainly won't be tomorrow. I'll try maybe to do one on Wednesday or Thursday. If not, I'll be back on the Blaze on Saturday for the show before last on the Blaze, and I will see you all, if not there, then on Facebook, Twitter, Blog Talk, YouTube, or some other platform in the world. Thanks, everybody, and talk to you soon.